Quit hitting your sister. Quit pushing his buttons. Welcome to Teacher Mom, and today's lesson is about systems of government and types of government. And as always, remember, if you can find the typo, you win the extra credit question. So today we're going to talk about government, what it is, what it stands for, what the point of it all is, and what different forms of government we actually see across the world. So, what is government? Well, government is an institution. Government is designed to protect the rights of its people. Depending on who's in control, that depends on whose rights are getting protected. It's also designed to provide public services for its community, and the government determines what those are going to be. It's also designed to provide for national security and the common defense, which we note is actually in the Constitution word for word, and to provide for and control the economic system. Now, when it comes to the economy, we also have different economic systems, but that is another lesson for another day. Government means it's an institution through which a society carries out its policies. So laws that we write or regulations that we want to enforce, we write those down in legislation, we turn those into policies and get them passed. Now, there are 5 types of government, but we're not going to get into those today. I just wanted you to see them in this awesome picture that we've used in the past and we'll use again. And we'll look at the far left and we'll look at the far right, not to be confused with liberal and conservative. We'll get into that discussion another day. But governments are typically either a unitary form of government, a federal form of government, or a confederate form of government. We typically only see unitary and federal, but confederacies do exist. Very rare nowadays, but we've seen them in past times as well. So, when we look at a confederate system of government, really what it is, it's a loose association of states or a loose association of governing bodies. Typically, they create an alliance with one another, they make an agreement with one another, and they're typically joining together in times of war or trade with one another or foreign nations. Unitary government is exactly that. Look at the very first part of the word, uni, one. It's one system. All the key powers are given to the national government. It doesn't mean that we won't have different levels of government, but it's all national government, and that's what we look at. Then there's the federal system of government. We're familiar with that mostly because that's what our system is, but government divides its power between the states and the national government. States can also create local governments, and each level of government in a federal system has some type of sovereignty in specific areas. Again, when we talk about federalism, that will be a deeper discussion, a more in-depth conversation. So for example, a confederate form of government, if you think of in the past, the 13 colonies, the original 13 colonies, they were a confederacy. They had a loose association. They really only wanted to come together in times of war against Great Britain, or to join Great Britain in fighting France at times. And then when it came to trade, and that was about it. They found a lot of faults in that system. That's why you don't see it very often. But we do have the European Union nowadays, in modern times. And if you notice the image on the left, you see a lot of those European countries are in shades of green. They come together to discuss issues of global violence, global economic impacts, violations of human rights around the world, and trade mostly. Okay, so there's an association between them, there's an agreement between those states, and they work together for a common goal. Unitary form of government is when your national government governs everything, and that's just the end of it. In Great Britain, the parliament is in charge and they govern everything. Part of the parliament in Great Britain is elected, others are appointed through their nobility or their house of wealth. So, but again, the national government kind of governs everything. You don't see state governments and local governments like you do in the United States. And then a federal system of government, which we find here because our states are kind of spread everywhere. And if you look, it's almost as if they're balanced when they're both put on the scales at the same time. Here on the right-hand side of the scale, you see the Capitol building, which is in Washington, D.C., which is where our Congress is housed, our national legislature, and they write laws that govern our entire nation. On the left-hand side, you see the states. You can identify Texas and Florida and Louisiana and a few other states and together they work in tandem and off of one another to do what's best in the best interest of our nation, as well as in the best interest of those individual states. So that's just kind of touching on what those three systems of government are, and we will get in more in depth later. So thanks for joining Teacher Mom today, and I hope to see you back tomorrow.